have Surj Gish, Managing Director at ROI DNA, and I also have Juanita Baker, VP of Strategy, Planning and Integration at ROI DNA. Hello to both of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
Yeah, happy for you guys both to be here. Really excited to dive in. So yesterday at the 6 Sense Breakthrough, you guys actually did a session talking about optimizing 6 Sense and LinkedIn targeting for maximum ROI. Can we dive into that? Let's do the insights, the spiel, high level. What was that session all about?
So it's really about getting the foundation in place to really maximize the results using targeting from 6 Sense in both 6 Sense advertising and LinkedIn. Some of it is sort of best practices, foundational stuff that we see clients often having to relearn. It feels sort of basic, but it is super important and super critical to getting that right, to really be able to understand results and drive results. We talked about challenges that folks had in a number of different areas. Do we have our segmentation set up right? We see clients a lot of times having things like static lists in place when they ought to be using dynamic lists.
True.
And we asked people to raise their hands and tell us if this was the case. And it was sort of a safe space to admit these kinds of things without any shame. And so some people had issues like that. We talked about, are you getting the performance out of the platform that you want? Things even like, are you aware of the users you have in the platform? Jen from Pure Storage, who presented with us, Jen Gingrich, talked about when they got into the platform, they had something like 50 users in there that probably most of them didn't need to be in there. There's that sort of governance type stuff. And then do you want to talk about the keywords part of it? It's such a critical deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw a lot of hands raised yesterday on keywords where, they've just put, the kitchen sink, if you will, within 6 Sense. And so really needing to do like a 6 Sense audit in order to analyze those keywords to ensure that they're hitting the right target audience with the right keyword strategy that is not generating unnecessary wasted accounts and things like that. So we really saw yesterday that keywords was probably kind of a key factor to improving their 6 Sense performance.
I actually talked to someone about keywords this morning as well. We're doing these strategy sessions here where people can come talk to us and present problems, and we're kind of brainstorming basically. It's been a lot of fun. And this person this morning, I won't give it away because we're not engaged yet, and this is sort of embarrassing. Their keyword setup. They had a competitor list for keywords, and they had a bunch of sort of descriptive keywords and not the competitor name they were kind of trying to target. So there's things like that happen in the setup that can be really problematic in terms of performance.
So talk to me a little bit more about ROI DNA. For anybody who may be unfamiliar with you all, what is it that you guys exactly do?
Yeah, so we're a digital marketing agency, formerly based in San Francisco, California, now based kind of all over. We're part of the Hotwire Global Group and the Enero Group. We do really kick-ass digital marketing. Our big thing is delivering ginormous results for clients. We are sort of known for our no assholes rule, which means no assholes internally and no assholes with clients. And we take that very
people in the back.
no assholes, folks. It's really, really important. And if you all were here, I would say come to our booth and get a t-shirt. But as much as that's like a big part of our branding, and we really believe in that, we're really, really values driven. The work is about driving really great results. Juanita's team is excellent at developing strategies that really delve into what the client needs, and then we execute on that. We focus on a few different areas. So ABX strategy, demand gen strategy, advertising execution, really strong SEO team, especially when we get into paid and organic search together, doing holistic search. And then we have a pretty killer creative team as well. We build a lot of great websites that convert really well, not just aesthetic designs, but like high performing website designs.
I love all that insight. And I actually had a client a couple years ago, I think it was 1 year now. It was the first time I heard of you guys. They had you guys as an agency. And I was like, oh, okay, it's the first I've heard of you guys. And I've been hearing you guys a lot more in the industry. So I think you guys are booming. I think you guys, it's a testament to the good work that you guys are doing. So keep it up. I do want to dive into more on your guys' 6 Sense audit process. We were talking about how keywords can kind of be a shit show. And it's really hard to get right on the first iteration. And it's not like a set it and forget it. Like, you always got to come back at some point and reiterate, because the brand is going to grow, the company is going to grow, right? You guys sound like you have it figured out with that audit process. So let's walk through, if you guys don't mind, how you guys take a client from initial, audit all the way to success to get those ginormous results.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll dive in here. So our 6 Sense audit process really uncovers keywords, exclusions, segments, and campaigns. And so, we review the keywords being targeted, and we focus on assessing whether those keywords are relevant, are they performing, are they aligned with the client's business goals? As we talked about earlier, business goals shift, products get added to their list. And so are we really creating the proper keywords there? And a lot of our work really is around kind of that keyword analysis. We also review exclusions to make sure that the campaigns are excluding those irrelevant or low value audiences, making sure that we're reducing waste and improving the quality of their engagement. And then finally, we dive into segment. Like Surj mentioned earlier, a lot of clients are still using static lists, surprisingly. And so making sure those lists are dynamic and ever changing. And also making sure that if segments have been set up for a long time, that we're evaluating those, because sometimes we're hitting the same audience because other segments haven't been sunsetted. And so that segment evaluation is critical to their ongoing success, and especially their ABX strategy. And then finally, we do a campaign audit, and we review their setup, their targeting parameters, their creative elements. Like Surj mentioned, we have a creative team, so we're really looking at whether or not they're performing well for themselves and also against their competitors. And so those are the some of the things that we do at the audit process. The other thing that we did at this particular session is, because we love our clients so much, and even our potential clients, is we've provided them with a 6 Sense audit template where they can go and download it and get information on how to conduct their own audit if they would like, or they can certainly reach out to us. And so for the listeners today, you can go to info.roidna.com/6sense-audit-template and download that, and hopefully that would help you improve your 6 Sense platform performance
Make
as
sure
well.
you send me that link too. I'll put it in the show notes. They can easily just click and go on.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that'd be super useful. I know everybody right now is trying to figure out the best way to set up 6 Sense. 6 Sense is in a lot of different clients that I work with, and it's anywhere between, hey, we just bought it, how do we use it? Or, hey, we've had it for years, but we lost turnover, somebody else brought it in, but they're no longer here. Yeah. We haven't been using it, the whole 9 yards.
Jen at Pure Storage talked about this in a way that has really resonated with some of the other clients we've talked to. She talked about, we had the Ferrari in the garage for, was it 18 months?
Yes.
And we came in and did this audit and helped them really figure it out. And, she has said, like, the 60-minute presentation that we did where we kind of provided our assessment was super powerful and gave them this, like, 4-quarter roadmap to run from. But that Ferrari in the garage that no one's driving, no one really knows how to like start it up. That analogy has resonated really well. And so the audit process lets folks like really get to the point of understanding the platform. And this isn't a dig on 6 Sense, because the team helps everybody implement very well. But so often, this is a really common thing we run into. Folks get the platform in place, they're paying a lot of money for it, they're stoked about it, and then they sort of hit a wall and they're not using it effectively. And so that and the lack of dynamic segments is the other one we hear a lot, surprisingly.
I love that. And I would actually agree. A lot of it is they get to a point where they're like, now what?
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? Or at that point, the person leaves the company and then there's nobody to actually manage it. Somebody else gets in, they mess up the segments, they mess up the keywords, and then we're just down a little bit of a spiral there. Talk to me a little bit more. We're in the Q4 planning seasons, budgets, planning, strategies, 2025. What are some things that demand gen marketers and go-to-market leaders should be thinking about and integrating into 2025?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of the clients that we have coming to us, are trying to transition from like targeted demand gen, where they're MQL focused, to ABX, and they're account-based focused. And so I think as individuals are planning for the new year, they should be thinking about just making sure they have that ABX blended strategy. It's okay to still be running targeted demand gen. It's great to be running ABX one-to-many or one-to-few or one-to-one. And so it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. And oftentimes, just getting buy-in within the organization, running an ABX pilot is super important. So you're picking, a specific target account list. Maybe a specific vertical, and you really understand your personas, and you're running a pilot to test and show that ABX definitely works, which then will set them up for the following year to really, expand on their ABX strategy and start replacing some of that old school thinking of targeted demand gen.
The other thing I'll say is that we're still in this, someone said this to me on Monday when I had first arrived, that we're still in this sort of like B2B tech winter, which I think is probably a pretty solid metaphor. So we're still seeing clients and businesses in general kind of like being asked to be doing more with a lot less, lower budgets, fewer people, that kind of stuff. And there's a reaction that happens to that where folks will pull back to like lower funnel activity, lower buying stages where there's a very clear conversion event, and they'll pull back to just that because it seems to be the most efficient. Then what happens is then the programs sort of wither and die because there's no awareness, there's no mid-funnel stuff, mid buying stages. And we constantly have that conversation, and I would use this microphone here to caution folks against that. Stick to solid marketing principles and don't be sort of bullied by the reduced budgets into just pulling back to the stuff that looks okay for right now. So every time we see that happen, the programs kind of wither and die due to the lack of exposure in the earlier stages.
Yeah, the key theme for all these conversations I'm having here at Sixth Sense Breakthrough is marketing foundations.
Yeah.
Is going back to the basics and really going back to the things that matter. And I would echo exactly what you said. One of my clients right now, we're actually having that conversation of growing efficiently, like how do we get more of the actual top of funnel. They've just been doing that more bottom funnel because it's easy to put the dollars in and get the expectation out of it. And so we're actually having that conversation, like almost in real life, if you will, about expanding that. And a tip that I gave them, which I'd be curious on hearing your guys' thought, is when we're pressured to reduce our budget or reduce our head count, where is it that we should focus? And the majority of people, like you just mentioned, focus more on like the lower impact the lower the funnel, and trying to get that impact to conversions. And my recommendation is to pick something in each stage of the funnel so that you still have a complete full funnel, but we're not like pumping all the way in on like all the different channels. But absolutely, like don't have the leaks in the funnel, which don't just like, pigeonhole and turn it in like one direction. So curious, how do you guys support those conversations with your clients when they're wanting to just say, nope, we're going to start all the way down here at the bottom of the funnel conversions? How do you advocate to have the other activities more of the top of funnel? Like you've got to complete that funnel overall.
There are a couple areas that I would jump in on that. One of them is sometimes the budget reductions can be countered with some discussion around things that matter. We often run into folks, especially in more senior positions, that don't totally understand the nuances and the details of all the metrics when working with a platform like Sixth Sense. Sometimes folks are still thinking about leads and this sort of stuff, so we don't have sort of understanding of buying stages and what these means and progression between buying stages, that sort of stuff. Sometimes those kinds of conversations and really educating and informing folks will help with that. Sometimes the budget decisions have already been made, and then we have to figure out other ways around this. So sometimes it's a matter of like prioritizing critical product lines over others, and putting budget into where you're going to drive volume. Sometimes it's a geo-targeting thing. Let's focus on key areas. I really like what you're saying about making sure that we have coverage in each stage. And sometimes there's other ways to do that where we focus on like top priority areas, and maybe we put off a little bit of testing or something like this until things get a little bit more, a little more better, as I guess I would say. The other thing too, that's like an overarching concept here though, is something that Jen said towards the end of the session yesterday, which was sort of about like committing. And so she used the words go slow to go fast. And this is sort of conceptually the same. Like we have to still commit to doing things right. And in her version of this, it was about like, we want to get to market with some stuff and we're worried about numbers, right? And so we move too quickly and we miss out on foundational stuff and things like this. It's relevant here is if we start to pull back to just lower funnel, lower stages, then we end up, like I said, the program's kind of wither and die over time. We've seen that over and over again.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, we were meeting with somebody today that was sharing some of the obstacles that they're facing. And when you're thinking about like ABX strategy and you're thinking about, they mentioned they have like 3,000 accounts that they're going after, but their budget has dropped 200,000 per month. And so in that case, where I believe people should focus is we don't have to focus on all 3,000 accounts. What we really need to do is understand and be hyper-focused on the accounts that we think are going to drive revenue. And so, doing like a light data analysis and understanding like where have you won or where have you lost, where are your opportunities, and kind of narrowing that list down and being hyper-focused on closing those deals, to me is something that's really critical at a time when you're reducing budgets.
Totally. And something I want to get your guys' insights on. A lot of companies right now are transitioning away from the MQL model, thankfully. And we're talking more about ABX. And we're talking more about starting an ABX program from scratch. And a common question that I get asked is, if we're going to crawl, walk, run, and start with an ABX pilot, what's the right number of accounts?
The short answer is that it depends, but it depends on each client, because when you look at if you did a data analysis and you're looking at their data, you're going to determine what accounts you should target, where you should, how do you like create the campaign framework for those. And so you might have a handful of accounts that are in like a one-to-many strategy, some in like a one-to-few strategy. And so for me, it's all about, do we understand our personas? Do we have the right content to pull off like a vertical execution? And so for me, it's really that. It's, wherever you're able to kind of have the content to support the movement of it, that's where I would start on a pilot.
We do a real deep target account list analysis. Times as part of the new engagement and figure this stuff out.
Awesome.
It's a very comprehensive process and gives us a lot of insight on what to do with that. But sometimes it's like a small number of really high value accounts is where it's at. And other times, we're working with a client where there's a much, much broader space. And then it's, figuring out like what is the top percentage of a pretty good number of accounts. We get into things like, we had a client a little while back that had something like 30,000 accounts on one of their lists, and it became untenable. It wasn't manageable. Generally speaking, though, given decent data, we want to have more than less, I suppose I would say, as long as they're high quality and we understand exactly what we're going after.
Yeah, I agree with that. And looking at the content that you have to support those, I think another key point, if I can just add to that, would also be the team's bandwidth. I mean, a lot of teams, they went from like 10 to 1 or 2. And so it's like, hey, we're going to go run 1-to-1 and we're going to exhaust that one marketer. So to your point, it depends, right? Like what the situation is, what the resources that they have, the content, the strategy for the company. So all super validating points. We're coming up at the end of the time here. I want to get one more question in, if that's okay with you all. As we dive into 2025, what is your top do and your top don't for demand gen marketers and go-to-market leaders?
I would say the do is, don't be afraid to move over to an ABX strategy. That would be the do. And the don't would be, don't try to market to the masses. Really be hyper-focused and targeted on those companies that are going to drive your business results.
Yeah. The do for me is a little more abstract. I mean, I think those are fabulous points, but the do for me is, well, you sort of did a do that was a don't. I like that because I like to mix things up, as you know. The do for me is, don't get freaked out by the state of the world, state of budgets, the state of business and all this. Like, stick to your best practices, stick to your really good strategic thinking, and, don't get pushed off of your like well-informed position of what you're doing based on your strategy. I guess you could say the don't is the same thing. It's a do, don't, right? But yeah, stick to the great work, stick to the great strategies, and don't let the B2B tech winter like throw you off your game.
I love that. Thank you all so much. Where can people find you and ask more follow-up questions?
ROIDNA.com.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Demand Gen Made Simple show. If you found value in today's episode, please consider leaving a review, as it really helps me reach more people just like you. And make sure to subscribe so you can be notified when the next episode drops. Thank you, and see you next time.